Hi everyone, we're Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric and we have Lucas as always.
Hey all.
So what we're going to be talking about today is Sabato Cristobal's prediction of the 2020 presidential election. Before we get right into it, we wanted to give a few updates, good news updates regarding our channel. We have officially hit 250 subscribers and we are expecting some sort of
Yay.
special to be making. Hooray. Lucas can delve into some other statistics.
All right, and the other milestone that we just hit was we hit 5,000 views in total for all our videos. That is a huge accomplishment. Thank you all so much. 250 is actually a huge milestone for us. That is, we are 1/4 of the way to 1,000 subscribers. We can't wait to get there. With that being said, let's get right into it. So right here we have a 2020 presidential prediction map according to Sabato's Crystal Ball. It is a pretty well-known website and prediction center. I do want to say this map is extremely not good looking. I don't know how a nicer way to say that, but it is pretty ugly. These colors are not that great. I would have used better colors, but we got to do what we got to do. Actually, for the most part, we do agree with this map. A lot of this we actually do agree with, like the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, DC, Delaware, New Jersey. You got the Northeast here. That's basically all safe. You got Illinois. That I completely agree with. It's not like Real Clear Politics where they put like New Jersey as a lean D, but it's good.
That was interesting.
It's pretty good. But the solid red states are pretty good as well. They got the Midwest, these states here, South Carolina. For the most part, I think it's pretty solid. There are a couple of states that we do not agree with, though. We should probably start discussing those. Let's discuss, let's start with more of these that we agree with. Maine's first district is solid. I agree with that. Maine's second district, I think at this point it's likely. I don't think that it's lean. There's a very low chance that it does go to the Democrats, considering it's a very rural area. There's not really a high shot of it going to the Democrats here. However, I do agree with Maine all-state being likely, although it is borderline lean considering how close it was in 2016. So that's interesting to think about here. But for the most part, I think Maine does make sense. It is logical here. Whoa, that zoomed in. Okay, that looks actually kind of better now. But okay. So here's the key. Okay, so let's head now to the Midwest, the Hillary Clinton's blue wall, or what she thought was her blue wall. One of her biggest blunders was she did not campaign here enough. I do think Joe Biden will learn from that lesson and will start campaigning a bit more. Minnesota is lean. Usually, maybe it was made before the George Floyd protests, but if this was made after, I do think at this point, Minnesota should be likely to safe at this point. Even when we made this map without the George Floyd protests, we still had this as a likely D state. So lean is a little bit too generous to Republicans, but I mean, it's within the reasonable range. Eric, why don't you talk about Michigan?
Yeah, so if my eyes don't deceive me, I think they also put Michigan for lean. They put okay. It was a bit again, quality is iffy. So yeah, so they put Michigan as lean. I would put it as tilt, maybe because of some of the rising protests, it does move up to lean. But it's somewhere in between lean and tilt for the Democrats after the protests,
yeah, I
especially.
do agree with that. However, I do lean more towards lean on this one, leaning towards lean.
Okay.
But I think not yesterday, but 2 days ago in our polling video, we did see Michigan as being a likely Democratic state. That's obviously a little bit too generous to the Democrats. But lean does seem to be a good characterization because it's kind of in the middle there, but it does favor the Democrats a bit more, so it would be lean. Let's continue our discussion of the blue wall. Let's head to Pennsylvania now. Pennsylvania, I definitely do think that Joe Biden has a slight lead here. I would put this one as tilty
Yeah.
personally. Yeah, according to polling, I do think this was lean D, if I'm not mistaken, but I do think, yeah, this was lean D. Again, this is Joe Biden's home state. He grew up in Scranton, which, if you don't know, is a pretty big city in Pennsylvania. I think the fifth biggest city in Pennsylvania, actually. So it's a pretty well-known city. He grew up here.
Mhm.
I do think that the home state advantage will help him. Obviously, it's not his home state anymore, but he was still born here. And Pennsylvania, the big cities are more Democratic, obviously. I do think Joe Biden will campaign here more than Hillary Clinton did, and maybe I think he will flip this state. So for that reason, I do think this is a tilt state. Eric, do you have
Mhm.
anything else to add on Pennsylvania?
Yeah, but before we did put it as tilt, it was more of a battleground state before we kind of knew, before it was kind of dormant. But because of current events and responses to coronavirus, it does make sense how Biden has a lead here. And the polls also do show it. Not that I'm completely trusting the polls, but it makes sense how the Democrats would be able to take some sort of lead in Pennsylvania.
All right, Eric, why don't you head on now to Wisconsin?
Yeah, so we see here how Sabato put Wisconsin as toss-up. Um, Wisconsin is quite a battleground state. It is probably the most
Mhm.
likely state Donald Trump does have a chance of taking from Joe Biden.
Definitely.
Yeah, and Minnesota's right next to there, which is where the Floyd death happened. Rippled right to Wisconsin. There was a lot of protests in Milwaukee, lots of rioting. I think that's going to push it over the edge. I think that will make it a tilt Democratic state. Also, Donald Trump's response is to George Floyd's death have not been that much appreciated by people around the country and in that area specifically. So that's going to push Wisconsin over onto the Democratic side as well.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Again, I think Joe Biden will come out and campaign more than Hillary Clinton did here. But as Eric said, this is the most likely state for Joe Biden to, Joe Biden to lose to Donald Trump. I do think Donald Trump does
Mhm.
have a high chance of carrying the state. That's why I put this one in between toss up and tilt. But if anything, I do think there is a slight advantage to Joe Biden, especially considering Trump's approval ratings recently. And I've actually pulled up the approval rating graph from 538 of Trump's approval rating these past few days. As you can see, this really has crashed. This is the coronavirus when it just started. Well, not just started, but kind of started getting, kind of big. Trump's approval rating actually did trend up from that period, went all the way up to here.
Mhm.
But then they started to crash after his response a bit,
Mhm.
and then these past few days it's completely dropped due to the response to
Yes.
yeah.
So so basically what happened is that I usually say this in times of crisis, despite who the party is, citizens try to come together on bipartisan and try to try to approve of what any politician, Democrat or Republican, is doing. This is what happened with Bush in 9/11. People, they supported him, but
Yeah,
that
right there.
support for Donald Trump, yep, that's exactly 2001. And but that slowly disappeared because of the preceding events of George Floyd. That was a very partisan issue, and Donald Trump, the Republican, took a Republican stance on that. Really displeased the Democrats, which is why it kind of is declining now.
Yeah, I know this. We're going off on a little tangent right now, but another example is George H.W. Bush. During the Kuwait Desert Storm War, his approval rating was all the way up to actually 89%. It doesn't show it here, but it did crash after a few days due to the 1992 recession. That's one of the big factors why he was not reelected in 1992. Anyway, let's head back to the map now. So yes, Wisconsin is lean D. Sorry, not lean D, tilt D at this point due to the crashing approval ratings. Let's talk about the Republican states now. We have Iowa, which is lean R, and Ohio, which is also lean R, and surprisingly, Texas is also lean R as well, and so is Georgia. This is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
They did not classify tilts here, so Yeah, this is pretty interesting. So let's take a look. Iowa, definitely I would put as likely. Lean is too generous. If we especially think about how much the margin was in 2016, it was pretty wide. But then again, you do have to think about it because Joe Biden was on the ticket with Barack Obama that won Iowa both times. But since then, Iowa has been trending to be more Republican. And as a result, I do think this one is likely. And the same thing can be said about Ohio. Ohio has also been trending more and more to the right. But Ohio, I'm a little bit more in the middle of between lean and likely. I am leaning more towards likely. So for that reason, I would put this one as likely. And another thing to bring up is I don't think that Texas is lean either. I do give some credit to the Democrats, though. I do think that it's probably in the middle between lean and likely, but I don't think that it's full on lean. Eric, do you have anything more to say about that?
We actually made a video that Ohio and Iowa are one of a few states that are trending to the right. So I don't think Joe Biden, he does have a very small chance. But it's very slim, and I think the Republicans will sweep it.
Right. Do you have any thoughts on Texas?
Texas, yeah. So we've said this in earlier videos about Florida and Arizona, Hispanic votes in support of the BLM movements. I'm starting to see how more and more political sites are classifying Texas as a lean because of these protests. They're trying to speak out. There was actually, I read an article today how 1 year ago, 15 months ago approximately, there was some sort of police brutality related to the same thing that happened in Minnesota, that it happened in Houston. So that probably sparked some outrage when that footage came out, which was from Texas, which could be solidifying that lean. It's kind of weird for me to say this, but I think it's starting to become more and more of a reality that it's
Mm,
possible that Texas could be lean. It's
yeah.
it's still between lean and likely towards likely, but it's very possible that it could be lean and it could stay like that for the next election because this is also another state that we said could be turning purple in 2024.
Right, and I definitely agree with that. I do think there is a high chance that it will go purple in 2024 here. I'm sorry, I was playing around with the circling, but basically I did circle the states based on the way that they're trending right now. Like Texas was circled in blue because it's trending blue. Georgia's trending blue as well, but Florida is trending a little bit to the red, to the right now. All right, let's head now to the state of Florida. Florida does have a high Hispanic vote. This is Trump's now home state. Um, I think Florida lean again. They don't have tilt on here. If I had to choose, it would be between toss up and tilt. They don't have tilt on here, so it's kind of hard to compare that to this lean. But I think lean is a little bit too generous to the president because, again, we still have this Hispanic vote here that will come out and vote for Biden as a result of the George Floyd protests. I mean, I shouldn't say will, but I think it's highly likely that they will. Um, and as a result, there has to be, there is some chance that Joe Biden will be able to carry the state. It's wouldn't be out of, the ordinary for that to happen. I know I was going to say to go to Georgia next, but I just do want to point out right now because I just noticed this. They actually put North Carolina as a toss-up while they put Florida as a lean. That's pretty interesting to me. Eric, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so we usually would probably switch those two. Before these events, we'd put Florida as a toss-up and North Carolina as a lean. I don't agree with the toss-up. I think North Carolina is going to Republicans. Maybe it's a bit less now, now that the Republican convention is not going to be there. But I think the Republicans still got North Carolina. Florida, it's probably a tilt Republican, if not toss-up after these protests. I think lean is a bit too generous for the Republicans this time.
And talking about North Carolina, I do want to also bring up the point of Roy Cooper, who is the governor here. Obviously, he's butted heads with the president quite a bit, and that might kind of bring out more people to vote. Also, this is a governor election year. Roy Cooper is on the ballot. So when people go out and vote, they might not be only voting for Roy Cooper, but also Joe Biden as well, assuming since they're both Democrats. Now let's head to the state of Georgia. Georgia has a very high African-American demographic that will absolutely help Joe Biden here, especially after the George Floyd protests, as well as in general, Joe Biden does perform very well with the African-American vote. We saw that in South Carolina. We saw that in Alabama. And we did see this in Georgia yesterday, actually. He did win the state with 83%, around 83, somewhere around there. We're not going to make a video on that because the primaries were a bit unimportant to kind of say. But Georgia, lean are, I would give it in between lean and likely. Honestly, if you ask me which one to put it as, I would say I'm dead in the middle. I honestly don't know, actually.
Yeah.
Eric, what do you think?
At this point, it kind of depends on who Biden picks for VP. He does have two options from Georgia. He has Stacey Abrams or Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms from Atlanta, both Democrats. In that case, despite their inexperience, I mean, maybe they'll get more popular by the end of in the fall somehow. Then that would make more sense to put Georgia as lean. But right now, I'm also kind of in between lean and likely as well. This is a respectable categorization.
Yes, it is. All right, so we've discussed. Okay, let's now head to Nebraska 2nd here. Nebraska 2nd is interesting. I have moved this characterization from lean R to tilt R now. And the reason is because, of course, we have the cities here, and that's going to kind of bring out more of the Democratic voters, and also because of these George Floyd protests that will have a pretty big impact on Nebraska. And I do want to go back to Florida. Again, someone made a comment yesterday about Jeb Bush not endorsing Donald Trump, how that actually might impact the Florida voters not to vote for the president because he was the governor of Florida. That was a very interesting point to make, and I do think that might be a factor. But then again, Jeb Bush was governor a pretty long time ago. Although he did run in 2016, I'm sure that he still has those supporters. So maybe they follow his lead and don't vote for the president. But that was a very interesting point to make. Let's now head to, again, Nebraska 2nd. I think this was its tilt. I have moved this one over. I do think the Republicans can edge out a win. Will it be big? No. Nebraska 2nd, for those of you that don't remember, in 2008, Barack Obama carried Nebraska 2nd, actually. So, again, it's possible, and really it can go either way. That's what it is for the tilt advantages. When you see a tilt, it's pretty much even, but there's a slight advantage for one side. Eric, do you have anything else to say about that?
No. Usually, I didn't really focus on Nebraska 2nd because before it was dormant, I'd at least put it likely for the Republicans. You know, Donald Trump carried it in 2016. At this point, the city's factor and more densely populated, it could, it could, I don't know why I stuttered. We can cut that out. It's possible how it becomes a lean. A lean makes more sense. Toss-up is way too generous. I think somewhere in between tilt and lean.
Again, this can be attributed to Trump's falling approval rating. I'm going to bring it back right here. So, yeah, that will have a pretty big effect as well. How about you do Arizona, Eric?
Yeah, sure. So they put it as toss-up. I'm starting to notice how Sabato is kind of neutral, bouncing back and forth, maybe leaning a bit. No, actually, no. They're fairly neutral. They put Arizona as toss-up. That makes perfect sense to me. Maybe after these protests, it does go to tilt D because applying to Texas and Florida, lots of Hispanics supporting the BLM movement. This could push turnout for the Democrats up, and that can cause Arizona to become a Democratic state for this election.
I 100% agree with that. In our election night videos, we did put the state as for Joe Biden. I still stand by that. Joe Biden does have a slight lead in the state. It's not big. Again, it's a tilt. All right, let's discuss now Nevada. Nevada leans to, I think this one is fair. We usually do put this one as likely, but if you do look at the polling does show a very small lead for the former vice president. With that being said, though, I am told that Nevada's polling is a bit left biased, and Nevada hasn't went to a Republican in a pretty long time. But at the end of the day, I do think leans is a fair characterization, and Colorado, New Mexico, same thing. They're less of a big margin as some of the safe states, but this is definitely still a very respectable and appropriate characterization for these states. And the same can be said about Virginia. We also usually put Virginia as likely. Another fair characterization here. Eric, this is our last state. Why don't you discuss
New Hampshire? Yep. All right. So they put it as lean. I think the last political website also put it as lean for New Hampshire. We usually put it as likely. It did go to Hillary Clinton in 2016. Maybe the reason they put it as lean, just like the other website, was because they do have a few Republican politicians in office, and somehow they got elected into office, so there's some sort of Republican turnout somewhere. If it's becoming pretty consistent, I think it's fair, but I still would put it somewhere between likely and lean, closer to likely.
Yes, I agree. I think they could also be taking into account polling. The recent polls do have Biden up by about 8 points, but if you saw our RCP averages video, this one was also in a lean margin, so that completely matches this. And that is our video today. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you guys for 250 subscribers and 5,000 views. We'll make it special soon. We'll promise. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you like our content, please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.